Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what is now the 22nd meeting of the Referendum Scotland Bill Committee. Yeah, I was quite surprised when I read that number myself this morning, and that's just this year. No apologies have been received, and the only item of business is the Stage 2 and the second day of the Scottish Independence Referendum Bill. Welcome to Nicola Sturgeon, Deputy First Minister, and officials, and also to Liam MacArthur. The only thing I want to say today, I want to make sure you've got the bill as introduced, the second marshal list and the second list of groupings in front of us. And my aim is to conclude Stage 2 today. And so we'll just get on with the proceedings, in which case I call Amendment 3 in the name of Patrick Harvey, grouped with Amendment 121. Patrick Harvey to move Amendment 3 and speak to both amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. During the tail end of our Stage 1 consideration and during the Stage 1 debate, it became clear that the slight overlap between potential parliamentary sessions and purdah could give rise to some unfortunate consequences. And although it's perhaps regrettable that we're in the position of having to find a workaround for that situation, various different solutions have been put forward. The first amendments from the corporate body suggested simply removing the corporate body itself from this part of the bill. My amendment is intended simply to refer to aspects of the corporate body's publications that would refer to business, to the meetings which may or may not be scheduled to happen during that short period of overlap. The official report, the business bulletin, and so on. The new amendment from Liam MacArthur, again on behalf of the corporate body, takes a similar approach. And so it's simply a question, I guess, today of whether we go with the one that wasn't exactly on the back of a fag packet in my office, but was certainly drafted without the assistance of the corporate body's no doubt excellent lawyers. So it may be that the committee would be minded to go with Liam MacArthur's amendment on this one, but for the moment, so that we can have the debate, I'll move Amendment 3.
Thank you, Patrick. Liam MacArthur to speak to Amendment 121 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener. I think Patrick Harvey set the scene in the background to this. I'm here, as you say, on behalf of the corporate body and following a formal decision by the corporate body. I think on that basis I may be better set out for the record the basis for that decision and also for the amendment that's been lodged. As Patrick Harvey said, this is a second stab at the amendment, and we have, I think, followed a similar approach to Patrick's, but I think covering the issue maybe a little more comprehensively. Paragraph 25 in particular refers to restrictions on publications of public bodies. Publication itself is defined very broadly in legal terms. Publish means to make available to the public at large or any section of the public in whatever form or by whatever means. The paragraph therefore has broad application. The SPCB believes that the publication restrictions of the bill would prohibit a range of normal parliamentary activities within the 28-day purdah period. Firstly, as Patrick's already mentioned, there is that slight overlap between the start of purdah on the 21st of August and the end of term time on the 23rd. I know this has already been noted by the committee, and the corporate body is grateful for that being flagged up. Perhaps more substantively, paragraph 25 would effectively prevent members from lodging motions, amendments and parliamentary questions dealing with, quote, any of the issues raised by the referendum question. It would also effectively preclude any statement that any devolved policy area would be better or worse in an independent Scotland. The provisions would also prevent the publication of official reports of proceedings in written form and on the website. This would affect not only any plenary proceedings the day before the start of the period, but potentially also committee proceedings that took place up to a week before. This would include the broadcasting of proceedings live and on the website. Business bulletins would similarly be prohibited, as would other parliamentary services, such as dealing with inquiries from the public via our public information and social media outlets. While we do not expect many committee reports to be published, there could be some SSI reports due to be published after the start of the 28-day period, and therefore could also be caught by the existing provision. Restrictions could also have an impact on other parliamentary activities. The Parliament has a unique function in Scottish public life and will attract worldwide attention in the run-up to the referendum. It may therefore wish to offer the facilities to host debates, discussions and other events relevant to the referendum during the 28-day period. This could effectively be prohibited under the terms of the bill, given the wide interpretation given to publication. Depending on how far the concept of publication by the Parliament stretches, members also might not be able to engage in media activities within the parliamentary campus during the 28-day period. We've been in discussions with the Scottish Government regarding the SPCB amendment and fully understand and agree with the objectives of Schedule 4 of the bill as they apply to public bodies. However, the SPCB is of the opinion that the references to the SPCB in paragraphs 25 and 26 are neither appropriate to the factual reporting of proceedings of Parliament nor wider parliamentary functions. In conclusion, however, we do wish to give a very specific assurance. That is, it is the function of Parliament to act impartially at all times, and we have the track record to prove we have the robust rules, procedures and policies to uphold that. It almost goes without saying that the SPCB will be especially vigilant before and during the 28-day period to maintain that record, having due regard to the constitutional debate that will be going on in the run-up to the vote. I therefore intend to move my amendment and hope the committee would support that in preference to the one in the name of Patrick Harvey.
Thank you, Liam MacArthur. Anyone else wish to contribute at this stage? Linda?
Yes, I would just like to add a couple of words as a fellow member of the corporate body. I think my starting point is the Edinburgh Agreement, which was as a result of work with Nicola Sturgeon and, of course, Michael Moore, the then Scottish Secretary. I think that was carried out in mutual respect, which has in some way underpinned the way that we've been able to work in this committee in terms of mutual respect across parties and across political views. So it has been very worthwhile. The Scottish Parliament corporate body also works in that way of mutual respect, despite political differences, with the well-being of the Parliament at its core and the Parliament's reputation. And that would come from the presiding officer at the top, from the members of the SPCB, myself and Liam MacArthur, also Mary Scanlon and David Stewart, and of course the senior staff who advise us and give us very good advice. So I'm able to back everything that Liam MacArthur has said about the function of the Parliament to act impartially at all times, and I do believe that we have the robust rules, procedures and policies which will uphold that. So I am very, very happy to support in full the SPCB amendment, which I was party.
Lewis MacDonald.
Very briefly, I would be interested to hear from Liam MacArthur simply a procedural point, if you like, about the period of Purda and how the corporate body would proceed. So, for example, you mentioned in your contribution that there would, in the nature of things, the corporate body would be minded to authorise events within the Parliament that respected the mutual respect that's been referred to and the normal policies and procedures. Will the corporate body meet during the Purda period, or will members maintain contact through correspondence? Clearly, everyone's going to be very busy in that period, one way or another, and the ability of the corporate body to deal with any issues that arise will be, I think, important in the light of the exemption that is offered in this amendment.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Liam, but from my own perspective, I'd just like to make a few comments myself. I thought the introduction covered all the issues, the technical aspects, importantly, and I think you put that case across well. But I think actually the most important part of your opening submission to this amendment was actually your assurance point on behalf of the corporate body, because at the end of the day, this is about trust, and whether or not we have got mutual respect for each other across the chamber about how we'll go about operating within the confines of the referendum period during Purda. And that assurance that was provided by the corporate body is pretty essential. And from my perspective, in terms of where we go with this amendment, I know I was one of the first to raise this issue in the chamber as part of the Stage 1 debate in terms of a suggestion that we should take the SPCB out of coverage in terms of it. But I think the amendment that's brought forward by Liam MacArthur does that. And just let me finish by saying, coming back to the issue of trust, because it is hugely important that Liam has put these comments on the record, as has Linda, because I think we all have to respect that all the way through this process. Does anyone else wish to contribute and let the Deputy First Minister come in? But first of all, actually, unusually, because a question has been made of Liam, I should ask Liam just to answer that question before I go back, because normally, because you're not leading the First Amendment, Liam, we wouldn't have the opportunity to come back to you. So unusually, I'll come back to you to let you answer. I'm not going to make a habit of this. In any case, it's the last stage too, so I can't.
Let me make my historic intervention then. I couldn't agree with you more, Convener, in terms of the points you make around trust. I do believe, though, we have procedures and standing orders in place that should offer reassurance, but I could probably do no better than echo what Linda Fabiani said about the way in which the corporate body itself approaches these sorts of issues. In terms of Lewis MacDonald's questions about what will happen during the Purda period, my understanding is I don't think any decisions have yet been taken about whether or not there will be meetings, but certainly it's standard procedure for the corporate body when it's not meeting to deal with issues by correspondence if necessary. And I think if there were issues that arose, it wasn't possible to get diaries to coincide to enable a meeting, then there's no reason at all that it couldn't be dealt with in correspondence in fairly kind of tight time frames.
In which case I'll go to the Deputy First Minister.
Thanks, Convener. With your permission, I'll just take a few moments to put the Government's position clearly on record on this issue. The bill that we originally introduced to Parliament contained provisions that were firmly based on PEPERA, restricting the publication of certain material by the Government or by other public bodies in Scotland during the 28-day period prior to the referendum. Paragraph 25 of Schedule 4, as we've already heard, specifically identified the Scottish Parliament corporate body as being one of the publicly funded bodies covered by these restrictions. The restrictions imposed by paragraph 25 are designed very deliberately to prevent any suggestion that public money or public officials are involved in campaigning for a particular outcome in the referendum. So there is a good reason behind these provisions. Similar restrictions had been imposed in the Welsh Assembly and the Westminster Parliament in 2011 in the run-up to both the Welsh and the AV referendums. All of that said, though, we recognise the concerns that have been expressed by the corporate body and indeed others on the effect that the restrictions might have on Parliament. I also and specifically recognise that the particular circumstances of the independence referendum are unlike other recent referendums. The interest across Scotland and beyond will be intense, and I think Liam MacArthur has pointed out quite fully this morning that if the bill is not amended, the restrictions on the Scottish Parliament will be significantly more onerous than those faced in either Cardiff or Westminster in 2011. So having listened to Liam MacArthur, I do understand the rationale for the amendment which has been lodged on behalf of the SPCB. The amendment will exempt specified material published by or under the auspices of the SPCB from the restrictions imposed on publication during the 28-day period. The amendment will also exempt anything which is published which relates to any meeting, debate, discussion or other event authorised by the SPCB in accordance with its rules and policies. Now, I think it's fair to say that the Government and I personally have had some concerns about removing the statutory restrictions, but I am reassured by the comments that have been made on behalf of the SPCB this morning. Our concern has very much been to understand how the corporate body and Parliament as a whole will operate in practice during the 28-day period before the referendum. I think we will all agree that it's important that Parliament has and is seen to have strict rules in place to govern procedures and practices. While all of us as politicians will have rigorous and I'm sure at times heated debate, it's vital that Parliament and the corporate body is seen to be and is totally impartial. And obviously these rules will be particularly important in the run-up to the referendum. So I'm particularly reassured by Liam MacArthur's comments this morning about impartiality. I think I agree with the convener that is the most important point. I think that we have to ensure it comes out of this debate. I think it's also important that the rules, the procedures, the policies of Parliament will be kept under review between now and next September, not least to ensure that nothing is done which might promote or support the promotion of any material that could be perceived to be one-sided during that 28 28-day period. I think the fact that Parliament has agreed recess arrangements which will avoid Parliament sitting for all but 2 days of the so-called purdah period will be enormously helpful in that regard. But it's also important that those who schedule business in the Parliament in the last days before recess do take account of restrictions on government activity, because clearly, even if we pass these amendments today in relation to Parliament, the government is still covered by the restrictions about what we can and can't do, and that has an implication on the ability to debate certain things in Parliament. So on the basis that the corporate body will continue to operate in a totally impartial manner, which Liam MacArthur is absolutely right to say it has a track record of so doing, and that any use of the Parliament's facilities to host events in the 28-day period will adhere strictly to the SPCB's rules and policies, I'm happy to support the amendment lodged by Liam MacArthur. I would ask Patrick Harvey to consider withdrawing his amendment, because I think it is covered in a more comprehensive way by the amendment in Liam MacArthur's name.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. Now we come to Patrick Harvey to wind up.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to echo the comments that others have made about impartiality and trust. It's crucially important that both these things are offered and accepted, and so it's good that we've had that tone. I did think it was slightly overkill to remove the SPCB entirely from the bill. My attempt was to introduce something that was a wee bit more specific. Liam MacArthur's Amendment 121 perhaps achieves that more successfully, and I'm very glad that there's broad support from it, including from the Government, and I would therefore ask permission to withdraw Amendment 3.
Thank you, Patrick Harvey. Does any member wish to object to withdrawal of Amendment 3? No one objects, in which case I call Amendment 121 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 3. Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Moved.
The question therefore is Amendment 121 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Okay. I call Amendment 42 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, group with Amendments 43, 117, 45, 46 and 118. Deputy First Minister to move Amendment 42 and speak to all other amendments in the group.
Thanks, Convener. To give voters as much information as possible about how campaigns are funded, the bill requires all permitted participants to provide regular reports to the Electoral Commission ahead of the poll on any donations and loans received. In its Stage 1 report, the committee asked the Government to consider whether there should be greater public access to information about donations during the referendum campaign in the interest of transparency. So to this end, Amendments 42, 43, 45 and 46 extend the scope of the first pre-poll reports on donations and loans to include any donations or loans received before the referendum period, but that are to be used to meet referendum expenses during the referendum period. This approach, which we've discussed with the Electoral Commission, will help give voters a more accurate picture of the sources of campaigners' funding, given that the majority of fundraising will have taken place in the months preceding the referendum period. Amendments 117 and 118 make amendments in support of this policy. They require the campaigner to provide a declaration confirming the accuracy of the report, and they place an explicit duty on the Electoral Commission to publish the reports as soon as reasonably practicable. So I move Amendment 42.
Any other members wish to contribute at this stage? There have been no other members. I'm assuming the Deputy First Minister doesn't wish to wind up. Therefore, the question is that Amendment 42 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Okay. I therefore call Amendments 43, 117, 45, 46, 118, all in the name of the Deputy First Minister, all previously debated, and I invite the Deputy First Minister to move Amendments 43, 117, 45, 46, 118 en bloc.
Formally moved.
Ask whether a member objects to a single question being put on these amendments. No member objects. Therefore, the question is that Amendments 43, 117, 45, 46, 118 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Okay, I now call Amendment 48 in the name of the Deputy First Minister. No, sorry. Sorry, I missed out a schedule. The question is that Schedule 4 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? I now call Amendment 48 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, group with other amendments shown in the groupings. Deputy First Minister to move Amendment 48 and speak to all other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. The Bill gives the Electoral Commission responsibility for monitoring and ensuring compliance with the regulations which apply to referendum campaigners. To do this, the Commission must have at its disposal the tools necessary to investigate any alleged breaches of the campaign rules and to sanction those who are suspected of committing a campaign offence or failing to comply with the requirement of the campaign rules. This is a vital element in promoting public confidence in the fairness and transparency of the referendum campaign. Schedule 6 provides for the civil sanction regime which will underpin the Commission's regulatory role. This includes a delegated power to make supplementary provision about the application of these sanctions. In my responses to the committee's Stage 1 report and the report of the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee, I confirmed that in order to provide earlier certainty about the civil sanctions, the Government would bring forward amendments to set out the additional detail in the bill itself rather than by a later supplementary order. So these amendments fulfil this commitment. In line with the Edinburgh Agreement, we've sought to replicate the equivalent regime under the PPERA as provided for in the 2010 PPERA sanctions order. There are some minor changes to ensure consistency with the rest of the bill and to reflect the Scottish context, such as setting the maximum amount of variable or non-compliance penalties in line with the Scottish statutory maximum. The majority of these amendments set out further details about how the civil sanctions should work in practice. Others are minor technical and drafting amendments in consequence of the fact that the provisions will no longer be prescribed by order. I move Amendment 48.
Any other member wish to contribute at this stage? No other member wishes to contribute. Deputy First Minister, I'm assuming, doesn't want to wind up. The question is that Amendment 48 be agreed to or well agreed. We are agreed. I call Amendment 49 in the name of the Deputy First Minister. Already debated with Amendment 48. Deputy First Minister, move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 49 be agreed to or well agreed. Okay, we're all agreed. The question is that Section 11 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. All agreed. I now call Amendment 50 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, group with Amendments 51, 52, 97, 99 and 100. Deputy First Minister to move Amendment 50 and speak to all other amendments in the group.
As part of its regulatory role in the referendum, the Electoral Commission will have a range of investigatory and sanctioning powers to enable it to monitor and ensure compliance with the campaign rules. The bill requires the Commission to prepare and publish guidance about how it intends to use these powers. The Commission has pointed out to us that already it has published similar guidance in respect of the equivalent powers that it has under PPERA, which could reasonably be used for the referendum. Producing new guidance would be an unnecessary duplication of work. Amendments 50 and 97 therefore remove the obligation on the Commission to produce new guidance and instead apply the PPERA guidance to the relevant powers under the bill. The amendments permit the Commission to publish additional guidance as required if there are any aspects of its role in the referendum which they feel would benefit from further explanation. Section 24 of the bill requires the Electoral Commission to prepare and publish a report on the conduct of the referendum. The report must include information relating to the Commission's functions under the bill, including, by virtue of Schedules 5 and 6, its role in relation to campaign regulation. The majority of the enforcement work undertaken by the Commission will take place after receipt of spending and donation reports and in response to any concerns raised in relation to published information. This could be some time after the referendum and could therefore delay the Commission's report to the Parliament under Section 24. Amendments 51, 52, 99 and 100 will enable the Commission to report on the use of its investigatory and sanctioning powers in the Section 24 report as far as possible in the time allowed, but also give them the option to produce a separate follow-up report on the use of these powers and sanctions to cover anything that has not already been reported. I move Amendment 50.
Thank you. Any other member wish to contribute at this stage? Thank you. Deputy First Minister, I'm assuming, doesn't want to wind up. The question is that Amendment 50 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. I call Amendment 51 in the name of the Deputy First Minister. Already debated Amendment 50. Deputy First Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Call Amendment 52 in the name of the Deputy First Minister. Already debated with Amendment 50. Deputy First Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 52 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that Schedule 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Okay, we're agreed. Now call Amendments 53 to 104 and 119, all in the name of the Deputy First Minister and all previously debated. I invite the Deputy First Minister to move Amendments 53 to 104 and 119 en bloc.
Moved.
I now ask any member whether any member objects to a single question being put on these amendments. I don't hear any objection. Therefore, the question is that amendments 53 to 104 and 119 be agreed to, or will agreed. We are agreed. Thank you. We'll start there. Right. Right. The question is that Schedule 6 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Agreed. The question is that Section 12 to 15 be agreed. Are we all agreed? I call Amendment 106 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, already debated with Amendment 11 on day 1. Deputy First Minister to move formally.
Moved.
I'm glad you remembered it. The question is that Amendment 106 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Section 16 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Agreed. The question is that Sections 17 to 20 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? I now call Amendment, so we're agreed on that one, but I now call Amendment 110 in the name of Annabel Ewing in a group on its own. Annabel Ewing to move and to speak to Amendment 10 and other amendment, and there's no other amendments in this group, so just speak to that one, please.
Thank you, Convener. I was getting a wee bit worried there about another amendment that didn't exist. Yes, thank you, Convener. So the bill as drafted contains provisions at sections 17 to 20 relating to observers at the referendum. Although, as it stands, there is no provision in the bill to require the Commission, the Electoral Commission, to prepare and publish a code of practice for observers. And indeed, we noted this gap in our Stage 1 report, Convener. And we noted also that PEPERA required the Commission to prepare and publish a code of practice for observers at elections, but that this requirement in PEPERA only applies to referendums if provided for in the specific referendum legislation. So there is no automatic application in the instant case, and the Electoral Commission recommended amending the bill to provide for a statutory code of practice in the context of the referendum. As they said, this would demonstrate a, to quote, clear commitment to transparency by facilitating international scrutiny of a country's electoral processes. And in our Stage 1 report, we also welcomed the Electoral Commission's recommendations. So the amendment in my name, 110, would insert a new section into the bill after the current Section 20, based on the relevant provisions of PEPERA to ensure a consistent approach. And what the new section would do would be to require the Electoral Commission to prepare and publish a code of practice for observers at the referendum. The amendment sets out what the code should cover and to whom it should apply. Observers are defined as representatives of the Commission, accredited observers and nominated members of accredited organisations, as previously dealt with in the earlier sections. The code must specify the manner in which applications for accreditation by individuals or organisations are to be made to the Commission and the criteria to be taken into account by the Commission when granting such applications. The Commission should, in this code, should also give guidance to relevant officers as to the exercise of their powers to limit the number of people in attendance at proceedings or to remove a person's entitlement to attend because of an act of misconduct. It is likely that the code would be similar to that for other elections and referendums, and the Amendment 110 provides that the Electoral Commission must consult the Scottish ministers before preparing the code and that they must lay the code before the Scottish Parliament. That is indeed consistent with the approach taken, I understand, by the Commission ahead of the local government elections in 2012. And the provisions also allowed the Electoral Commission to revise the code at any time, subject to the same requirements for consultation and laying before the Scottish Parliament. I would conclude by saying that it is very likely, of course, as we have heard, that next year's referendum will attract significant attention from out with Scotland, and that large number of individuals and organisations will apply to be observers, and I believe a statutory code of practice for observers will help to facilitate this. I note, finally, that the Electoral Commission does support this amendment, and they state that it will ensure that the referendum meets the highest international standards of transparency by supporting full independent scrutiny of the referendum processes. So I would wish to move Amendment 110 in my name. Thank you, Convener.
Any other members wish to contribute? Annabel Golding.
Just clarification that I accept the principle of the amendment, but at subsection 4, where it says the Commission must consult the Scottish ministers. I mean, that's not unintentionally restrictive. Presumably the Commission is free to consult whoever it wants, but I take it that the purpose of the amendment is that, amongst other people, it should consult Scottish ministers. I just didn't want it to be restrictive.
You have the opportunity to wind up at the end. You can answer these questions then. Anybody else wish to contribute? Nobody else wishes to contribute in that case. Deputy First Minister.
Thanks, Convener. The Government's view is that nothing in the bill as introduced would prevent the Electoral Commission from producing and publishing a code of practice for observers at the referendum, and that's why we didn't feel it necessary to make explicit provision for such a code when we introduced the bill. However, I have reassured the committee on several occasions that the Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that the referendum meets and is seen to meet the highest possible standards, international standards of fairness and transparency. The Commission has argued that a clear statutory code of practice for observers at the referendum will help to facilitate proper scrutiny of the process and therefore will increase transparency. On that basis, and having listened to Annabel Ewing's persuasive comments this morning, I'm persuaded of the merits of this amendment, and I'm happy to support Amendment 110.
Mr. Annabel Ewing to wind up.
Yes, I would just like to respond to the point raised by Annabel Goldie, just to say that my understanding and my reading of this section would be that it is not restrictive and that the Electoral Commission would remain in a position to speak and consult with people widely, as it does on many issues, and rather it is simply making it quite clear expressly that whatever else it does, it must consult with Scottish ministers. So I hope that provides clarification to Annabel Goldie, and I would wish to press the amendment in my name, Convener. Thank you.
The question, therefore, is Amendment 110 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that Section 21 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. I now call Amendment 107 in the name of the Deputy First Minister and a group on its own. Deputy First Minister to move and to speak to Amendment 107.
Amendment 107 responds to a suggestion by the Electoral Commission and provides the Chief Counting Officer with a specific power to issue guidance to counting and registration officers about the exercise of their respective functions according to the bill. While this power is implicit in the bill already, the amendment will remove any possibility of ambiguity by stating expressly that the Chief Counting Officer can issue guidance as well as giving directions. I move Amendment 107.
Wish to contribute? No member wishes to contribute. Deputy First Minister, I'm assuming, does not wish to wind up. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 107 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. I call Amendment 122 in the name of Drew Smith and a group of its own. Drew Smith to move and to speak to Amendment 122.
Thank you very much. Convener, Amendment 112 is a revised version of Amendment 120, which I withdrew on Monday, and the purpose of Amendment 122 is the same as that of the previous 120, which is to make clear that in drawing up guidance which the Electoral Commission will produce in advance of the referendum, the Commission should provide more information about what may constitute a common plan. The common plan is referred to a number of times on the face of the bill, as members will know, and provisions relating to it exist in order to assist the regulation of how different organisations on either side of the debate work and campaign together and indeed plan in common. It's not my object in this amendment, Convener, to restrict the right of different organisations or the practicality of different organisations working together and planning in common, but rather this amendment just seeks to bring some greater clarity around how the Electoral Commission might define a common plan and therefore how the common plan provisions would operate in practice. I've had discussions myself with the Electoral Commission, and I think it's clear from that they do recognise that the term common plan at the moment is both undefined but also difficult to define. And so it's a recognition of that difficulty in arriving at a foolproof definition, given this is essentially a unique concept for this piece of legislation, that the drafting of this Amendment 122 is not prescriptive. It simply allows the Electoral Commission in their guidance perhaps to give some examples of things that they think may constitute a common plan rather than ruling things in or out. And I hope, therefore, that the change between the previous 120 and the revised 122 addresses any workability concerns which the Electoral Commission originally had, Convener, and I move the amendment.
Thank you, Drew Smith. Any other members wish to contribute? Patrick Harvey.
Thank you. Just to say that I welcome both the amendment and the fact that the Commission now supports this version. One of the areas of questions that I've had from very many people in speaking at campaign events so far, is how will the rules affect us? And there are many particularly small organisations that don't necessarily have paid staff or sources of formal advice, or indeed, know where to go to find legislation to read what it says. Many of those organisations are the ones who are, I think, most in need of clarity about what is going to be allowed. And I hope that all of us want to ensure that they're in a position of being given clarity about what's expected of them, rather than being expected that rules will end up being enforced. We want compliance rather than enforcement as a preference. So I think clarity around this guidance is extremely important, and I welcome the fact that Drew Smith has brought a new version of it back.
Anybody else? In which case, Deputy First Minister.
Yeah, the Government is happy to support this amendment, although we understand that the Electoral Commission is already planning to cover the Common Plan rules in its guidance. I think it made that point in a letter to members yesterday. The amendment will provide greater certainty and reassurance that the sorts of circumstances that could be seen to constitute common plans will indeed be included in the campaign guidance. So with those comments, I'm happy to support Amendment 122.
Okay, Drew Smith to wind up.
Only to thank members for contributing and for their support, and to the Government for considering and supporting this amendment to the Electoral Commission for the discussions that they've been prepared to have with us about it, and to the clerks for circulating their advice on it at a late stage this morning. Convener.
Drew Smith, the question therefore is Amendment 122 be agreed to or all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that Section 22 be agreed to or all agreed? Agreed. The question is that Section 23 be agreed to or all agreed? Agreed. Now call Amendment 111 in the name of Rob Gibson, a group of its own. Rob Gibson to move and to speak to Amendment 111.
Thank you, Convener. I've been interested throughout this process in encouraging participation, and Section 21 of the bill, as currently drafted, gives the Electoral Commission the power and the duty to take such steps as they consider appropriate to promote public awareness and understanding in Scotland about the referendum question and voting in the referendum. The bill does not currently contain any specific provision to give counting officers either the power or the duty to promote or encourage voter participation. The Scottish Government have previously said that the bill, as introduced, does not prevent counting officers from promoting participation in the referendum. The Electoral Commission will have a duty to promote public awareness, and we would all expect them to work with counting officers and others to encourage participation as part of this. However, we have heard from the Commission and others that while this may be the case, they would prefer a specific provision in the bill to give counting officers powers of their own in this important area. The Electoral Commission and the electoral administrators have noted in evidence to the Bill Committee that the current position in the bill is at odds with other recent electoral legislation, including the Act which set out the regulations under which the AV referendum was run. This Act gave the power to the Chief Counting Officer and to individual counting officers as well. The Electoral Commission have suggested that an amendment to the referendum bill to give counting officers a specific power to encourage participation in next year's referendum would clarify the intention of the bill and enable counting officers to take forward their local public awareness plans with increased confidence. I'm sure that we are all in agreement and keen to see everything we can do to ensure a high turnout next September. Convener, I move Amendment 111.
Does any other member wish to contribute? Tavish Scott.
Thank you very much, Convener. I wonder if I could just ask Mr Gibson a couple of questions for clarity. I absolutely take his consistent submission on participation, which has been very fair throughout our proceedings, but in his discussions with the Electoral Commission, or in the advice he's received from the Electoral Commission, have they clarified the role that the counting officers would play in respect of the, dare I say it, nakedly political period we'll be in? It will be a challenge for all of us in that sense, especially those officers charged with taking the impartial role that Mr Gibson described in his opening remarks in that spirit and in that intent. And therefore, I simply would like, if he was able, some clarity as to how the counting officers will deal with that. And in that sense, will they be monitored by any other particular body, or are they potentially in the area here, were we to pass this amendment, of being open to challenge, and what would that challenge be? I wonder if I could just seek some clarity on that, Convener.
Obviously, Rob Gibson can deal with that when he presses or withdraws and winds up at the end. Anybody else wish to contribute? Deputy First Minister.
Thanks, Convener. The Scottish Government position on this issue has always been that there's nothing in the bill to prevent the Chief Counting Officer or counting officers from promoting participation in the referendum, and that an explicit power isn't strictly necessary. However, I realise that electoral professionals are particularly keen to ensure that this point is covered in the bill, not least to ensure consistency with other legislation. I also know that the Chief Counting Officer is very well to address the point that Tavish Scott made, is very well aware of the obligations of impartiality. So in light of this and the arguments that have been put forward this morning and previously by Rob Gibson, I'm persuaded that this amendment would be helpful in providing clarity about the powers available to encourage participation, and that this will make it easier for them to exercise their functions. So for these reasons, I'm happy to support the amendment.
Rob Gibson, to wind up and to press or withdraw.
Thank you for your comments. My understanding basically is that counting officers who apply themselves to the election process in normal terms do so in a fashion which is not partisan and that provides absolutely unequivocal advice to people, and I would not expect them to act any differently in the circumstances of the referendum. Therefore, I believe that the question of their professional behaviour should be beyond reproach. With regard to the question about it being monitored, I think that the provisions that we have for the Electoral Commission to make reports about these issues is something which could dwell on that matter if it arises at all. And I believe that the monitoring question, which has been asked by Tavish Scott, should be dealt with in the context of the reports that the Electoral Commission make about the overall procedures. And therefore, I'm very happy to continue to move the motion.
Press it as well.
To press it.
Okay, thank you. That means the question is that Amendment 111 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that sections 24 to 28 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. I call Amendment 108 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, already debated with Amendment 7 on day 1. Deputy First Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 108 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. Call Amendment 109 in the name of the Deputy First Minister, already debated with Amendment 7 on day 1. Deputy First Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 109 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're agreed. The question is that Schedule 7 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that sections 29 to 32, Schedule 8 and sections 33 and 34 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. The question is that the long title be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're agreed. That ends consideration of Stage 2 of the bill. Just for members' information, according to the committee's published timetable, Stage 3 proceedings are intended to take place in the week beginning the 12th of November. And can I thank my fellow committee members for their attention to detail during Stage 2, the robust scrutiny and the appropriate spirit that this whole exercise has been undertaken in. There are no further meetings scheduled for the committee. However, we may need to meet again to consider subordinate legislation, and the clerks will contact members as soon as they have any indication when this will be forthcoming. And it will be, I think, it may well be sooner than we expect. But in these circumstances, thank you very much for everyone's attendance, and to Deputy First Minister and other officials. Not tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Nor next week or the week after.